So we are looking at this idea about the courage to prosper. And I know you're thinking to yourself, why courage? Doesn't everybody want to prosper? But I'm going to suggest to you that actually the easy thing to do in life is to stay stuck. Right? It's easy to get into our rut, into our groove, and just live our life out that way. The only problem with that is our life doesn't change until we're willing to look deeply at who we are, what we believe, and and the choices we need to make to have life be different. So it's actually very funny you would say that, Dan. I do kind of like to talk about money. That has been my healing. You're welcome. Because as a youngster, we didn't talk about money in my household. That was not something you talked about. And I remember getting in so much trouble because I asked somebody how much money they made. And, it was not well approved. So I learned early on, you don't talk about money. Which the great irony, as all ironies are, is that I got to go into a profession that I got to talk about money. Not only about money in general, but about your money. And why you needed to give it to us. And so, I got to have some healing around that. Because here's the thing. In case you're nervous right now, just take a breath, relax, breathe. It's going to be fine. It's, this only goes on so long, and then you can go back to your normal stuck life. I kid. No, right? But here's the thing. It's just a thing. And yet, what I know about things is sometimes we confuse them with spirit. Case in point. What do I have in my hand here? What is it? 50. Okay. Here's the thing. $50. Okay? I'm just going to set that there. Now, the question is, will you spend the next 15 minutes looking at the floor or listening to the idea that could change your life? Right? Just going to sit there. It's like, I'm trying to be so spiritual right now, but you see, Jesus said to us, we must make a choice who we will serve. Will we serve the divine or will we serve the form? And so I think this is this great lesson for us over and over and over to learn that we are spiritual beings housed in form, having a human experience. And the great lesson is not to attach too deeply to the humanness of who we are, to the form in which we live. You see, we're so often in this place of awareness and understanding that we're spiritual beings, but then we forget because life doesn't show up for us exactly the way we want it to. And sometimes in our teaching, you see, when Diane was a member of whatever community she was a member of, I like how we're so secretive about these things, but I think it's the one where they burn the purse with the incense. You know that old joke, right? Anyways, I think. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing, right? We develop these weird ideas around stuff, and we get into the form and the structure, and then we come into this way of teaching that says, wait a minute, maybe spirit is closer than your breath, nearer than your hands and feet. And maybe this life that we are seeking is seeking us. Maybe there is a way of living and a way of being in the world that allows some divine, magnificent thing to show up for us. And so money then is just a thing. Stuff is just a thing. Even the body is just a thing. And eventually we all turn it back in. Right? Say, nobody gets out alive. So when we begin to shift our relationship between that which is spirit and that which is form, they're not separate, but we identify more with the spiritual and less with the form, we begin to find peace. So because it's money month, as I like to call October, it's about prosperity. It's about prospering. It's about being willing to get beyond our old ways of thinking. And if there's any area that I see as very common for people to have issues around, it has to do with money. Would you agree? Yes. We get confused. And so we go in search of the thing rather than the thing itself, as Ernest would say. So I've been reading several different books. I've always got 10 books going on at any time, and I like to pull and whatever. So I was reading Kawasaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I'm reading Susie Orman, and another one called The Tao of Money, and I don't know what else. And then I sat back and I was sitting with that going, what are they all saying? You see, because I like the books that aren't just like put the money here and do this sort of thing, but says, look at what's going on within you, because it turns out that it is our thinking that establishes our belief, and it is our belief that establishes our behavior. And so until the thinking and belief change, the behavior remains the same. And so I was looking at kind of, is there a common thread in these books? And essentially what they said is this: if you want to have a different experience with your money, you're going to have a different experience with yourself. You're going to have to begin to identify yourself as worthy, as deserving of greater good, of being in a divine flow. We have to shift our thinking away from a limited commodity into an unlimited way of being and thinking in the world that knows the divine is our source and our supply. I just recently had an experience of this. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I guess I am. I've already started down this road. You know that phrase, help me, I've started talking and I can't get up. Some of you remember in the summer we hit a little financial crunch as spiritual community, and all of a sudden we were sitting there going, oops, we have more outgo than income. And so as it turned out, I had taught a class and that brought in a nice little chunk of money, and my portion of that would have been about $1,500. So I said, don't worry about it, let's get the bills paid, we'll let that sit and whatever. And so it's been sitting in this escrow account, so to speak, for some time. And just last week I had a epiphany that I didn't want to be in that kind of relationship. I didn't want to have the church have a debt to me. And so I was at choice. Now, I'm not a victim here. I want you to understand. I made the choice to say, let it ride. But I got still, and I got there, and I said, I can give that money to the center. Because this is not my source. The divine is my source. And I could feel good about that, and I can clean up that relationship, and we move on. Happy that I can make a contribution to the well-being of this spiritual community. Now, I want to tell you, my intention was not what can I get out of this. It was just how can I support the community in my own little way, and that was one way I could do it. I want to tell you, within 10 days, 10 times that amount came in the mail. Yes, thank you. Now, which I'll tithe on as well, because I believe in the principle, the understanding that we live in a divine flow. Now, logically, that may or may not have made sense, but until we get the consciousness right around it, we try and manipulate stuff to fit our vision. When we get clear on vision living itself and moving itself into form, then we make a different decision. The idea around courage, as Mark Nepo says, is that it is about living in the core of who we are. You see, when you think about it, when we know who we are, when we know we're spiritual beings, when we know we're one with the divine, then we make a whole different set of decisions and actions than when we think we have to get stuff. When we think we have to manipulate the universe, when we think we have to do things to make life be different so we can have what we want. So ultimately, the courage is to live from our core, to understand our values, to understand who we are. You see, I'm happy that a core value of mine is generosity. I love that quality because it always reminds me that I always have something to give. You see, when we think backwards, we think that when we have more, we can give more. But the opposite is what is true. When we give more, we have more. Crazy darn universe we live in. Who made this deal? So I was thinking, as I do every Saturday night, as I sat by the fireside reading my Bible, being the pious and wonderful person I am, and I was reminded of the story of Jacob. Now, we're going to do a quick version of the Bible according to Marty, which you know is loose. You might want to read it for yourself because I take certain liberties. But you all remember Jacob, right? Some of you are going, huh? Just nod your head, pretend like you did, right? Okay, so here's the deal. Here's Abram, big dude, starting guy. He has two sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau is the oldest. Esau, according to the custom, would be the inheritor of the divine birthright, meaning all the goods go to the firstborn son, right? But there's another son, Jacob, who's wily and in cahoots with his mother, manages to trick Esau. And as Abram is on his deathbed, can no longer see, is blind, they've tricked him and said, give me the blessing, and the blessing is given to Jacob, not Esau. And the first deception happens. Now, here's the thing. Back in the day, when you gave a blessing, you only got to do it once, right? There's no going back on this thing. It's like shooting an arrow. Once it's gone, it's gone. So, Esau, not happy. Not happy one little bit. And so that ensues a battle and a struggle for some years to come. Now, interestingly, Jacob goes off about his life, and then he is tricked into 7 years of servanthood because he falls in love with the beautiful Rachel. But he gets tricked into marrying Leah, unless I've got these wrong, but you can look this up on your own. You can, right? Right? So he is a tricker. And lo and behold, karma even worked back then. And so he finds himself in a situation where he is situated, and after the 7 years, he takes his wives and his servants and his 11 sons, and they're off on the journey. Still is not reconciled with Esau. So here's where we're going to pick up the Bible story. That night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. Now, because I can't stand not having this political commentary for one moment, so when people talk to you about traditional marriage, as it's defined in the Bible, just saying, there, you might want to read the thing before you start hitting people with it. But anyways, after he'd sent them across the stream, sending the family, the wives, all of them, he was left alone. And then a man, sometimes in some translations, an angel was there to wrestle with him. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, let me go, for it is daybreak. There is an awakening happening. Now, some people, you can read this however. I personally love this as the struggle with our shadow. That all of his possessions went across the stream, found a way to cross, and he was left alone with the greatest enemy that we all have, ourselves. And he had to struggle through the night before the awakening, before the morning could come, to discover who he is. Now we see the evolution in consciousness because all of a sudden, I don't know, maybe he's a vampire because the angel says to him, I must go, it's daybreak. So maybe that's where that whole story started. I don't know. As I said, I do take certain liberties, but Jacob replies, I will not let you go until you bless me. You see, every one of us struggle in some way with life. In some way, every one of us has had to come to terms with pain, with loss, with sorrow, with that divine discontent, whatever it is, every one of us will struggle with it. But you see, it takes rare wisdom and insight to say, I will stay with this until I receive the blessing. Joseph Campbell in The Hero's Journey talks about over and over how every hero, every heroine goes through a process and eventually goes through that supreme ordeal, that dark night, at which point they are left face to face with themselves. And it is when that is reconciled, it is then that they emerge, and that is where the gift lives. But you see, so often we get into the trials and the tribulations and the challenges, and we sort of forget who we are. It's at that point, as our practitioners will attest, you come to see your practitioner, and you say, this isn't working. Let's pray this away. But wisdom would say, I will stay with you. I will wrestle through this. I will wrestle with my shadow until the gift is found and the day dawns. And I emerge from this experience not only surviving the experience, but becoming empowered by the experience, becoming more awake, more alive, more fully present in the world. Wisdom says to us, stay with it. Now, I know this teaching, Mary talked about coming in 1987, which is about the same time I came into it. She's not done. I, on the other hand, obviously, have figured it all out, right? Right? It's not about the destination. It is about the journey. But what Mary can tell you, what I can tell you, what Diane can tell you, what Lynn can tell you, what Shemaine and Rick can tell you, is that when we stay with the journey, more and more we discover who we are. And more we live from divine flow. And more we recognize our true source. More and more we disidentify with the world and identify with the spirit that is within us. So my invitation to you is stay till daybreak. Stay in it. Stay with it. Be awake. Allow the daybreak to come. Allow yourself to receive the blessing of the struggle. The option is not whether you're going to struggle at some point in this lifetime. I can guarantee that. I don't guarantee a lot. That I can guarantee. Right? The real question is, who will I become as a result of this experience? How will I use these spiritual tools, these spiritual gifts that I've been given to become more empowered, to share my light, to share my love? You see in the story of Jacob, who was one who thought that he would trick his way into his good. And then as the story unfolds, we realize that he realizes, he still hasn't, up until this point, he still hasn't dealt with Esau. That's what's coming next. And because of the shift in consciousness and awareness, peace is made manifest. Life is changed. And he grows in to being that. And he then has a new name. Because in biblical times, if you had a change in nature, you had a change in name. And so he goes from the supplanter, Jacob, to one who strives with God, Israel. Who will you be? Who will you become? Whatever your challenge is, perhaps you're living in absolute bliss. It's all working for you today. Good for you. Good on you. We're happy for you. You want to hang around and talk to us lowly people. For the rest of us, we get to look at who do we want to become. Why I love this spiritual community is it supports us in all the seasons of our lives. When it's times of flow, when it's times of joy, and when it's times of less than joy. We're here together to love and support each other in knowing the truth of who we are. So let us take a moment to pray, shall we? As we turn inward, honoring and acknowledging this one divine life, this one infinite possibility, this one presence and power that is revealing itself in, through, and as all creation. I am reminded that it is this same intelligence that has caused all things to be. It is the same divine wisdom that has brought the entire universe into expression, that reveals itself through the galaxies, through the planets, through the rain that falls, through the flowers that grow, through life itself. There is indeed but one life. That life is our life right here and now. And so as I speak this word of truth, I'm simply recognizing and knowing that it is a power and a word that is spoken through the consciousness of wholeness. And so as I recognize wholeness, I recognize that truth for each of us gathered here. That wholeness reveals itself as health, well-being, as vitality. As I speak this word of truth, I know it is spoken through the consciousness of abundance. That abundance comes forth from the one source that supplies all. And that we are already one with it. There is nothing to do, nothing to become, but simply an awakening that must occur as we realize our divine birthright. I know that love is indeed the only reality. And so as I speak this word of truth, I'm joyously knowing that there is love and fear, and in this moment we choose love. We choose forgiveness. We choose to release and let go of that which no longer serves us, to move confidently into that powerful being that we are. We allow our light to shine brightly. How good it is to bear witness to the ever-present reality of divine spirit. How wonderful it is to know that we are divine beings unfolding perfectly. That we are here to surrender to that something more. And so we know right here and right now we are blessed. We know right here and right now that this community is blessed. That it is divinely guided, divinely supported in its fulfillment, in its unfoldment. We extend that blessing to our brothers and sisters around the planet this day. We know that there is always a divine light, even in the appearance of darkness. We know that we are only one collective thought away from peace. So we bless our brothers and sisters around the planet. We bless the planet itself with all of her inhabitants. We're knowing a world in harmony with itself and a world that works for all. And as always, we bless all priests, rabbis, ministers, teachers of every faith. For I know that there are many pathways to the divine, and so we honor and celebrate them all, naming them all good and very good. In joy and gratitude, then, I simply release this word to that law of mind which knows what to do and how to do it for the highest good of all. In joy and gratitude, then, I simply allow it to be so, as together we say, and so it is.